Hello, the purpose today is the rose of the Atlas Catalan and its mysteries. This rose I discovered by chance in the Atlas Catalan during my research on portulans. Portulans are maps from 13th, 14th and 15th century and are generally made on base of animal skin. Vellum is known to be the one of the most remarkable quality. Here is the carte Pisane, which was founded in the well-known town of Pise, and you can see that at the National Bibliothèque of Paris. Here is the portulan of Pietro Giovanni Prune, that you can see at Musée Correr in Venetia. And the portulan of Dulcet, one of the most interesting, posing along many questions, that you can see at the National Bibliothèque of Paris. The object of our study is the rose of the Atlas Catalan. The portulan is one of the most remarkable pieces standing at the National Bibliothèque of Paris. I made a half-scale reproduction of this work preserved at that bibliothèque. The original work is drawn on vellum, mounted on 12 pieces of wood once hinged together. It measures 3 meters long and 64 centimeters high. The first 4 boards support text and pictures of 3 roses. We can also notice the drawing of a zodiacal man. The 8 following birds support maps for the Mediterranean Sea and Eastern countries. The rose in question stands at the very beginning as soon as we open the Great Atlas. In total, there are 3 roses, 2 small and 1 large, occupying 2 boards. Focusing at that moment on the first rose. The author, Cresque Abraham, explains to us that the rose is in fact a tide calculator and attempt to give an explanation and how it operates. Here's what he said in the text accompanying the rose. Just under the picture, he is using Catalan language. This is the course of the tides from Mount Gibraltar to Cape Penmark in Britain. The moon in grey northeast, and Lebeg, southwest, wind from land, low tide. It is totally stupid, and we are going to discover why the author has wrote such nonsense. Compass card used in Mediterranean during the Middle Age. Here you can see the grey. It is the northeast. The Lebeg, or Libeccio, is the southwest. The Mistral, or Mest, well known from yachtsmen, is the northwest. Therefore, Cresque Abraham established a relationship between the directions of a compass and the tides, low tide or high tide. This assertion shows that he didn't understand what he was copying. This error has never been repaired. Abraham copied in the 14th century the book written by a monk who lived in the 11th century, but he didn't understand it. This monk was called Honorius Augustodunensis or Honorius d'Autun. It took more than 200 years between the creation of the work of Augustodunensis Honorius and the realization of the Atlas Catalan. Not to mention that Honorius lived in England while Cresque Abraham was on his island of Majorca in the Mediterranean Sea. Honorius wanted to describe a simple paper computer in use in his time in the English Channel, just after the conquest of England by Guillaume de Normandy. On his island of Balear, Cresque Abraham was far from the problem posed by tidal calculation on the coast of Britain and England. Among the explanations that Honorius had left was the subterfuge of the representation of a blue wave over the picture. Cresque didn't understand the signification. The error persisted until now because we consider Cresque Abraham as a scientist, although that led us to question his credibility. The blue waves drawn on the rose show transparency. Honorius used a very intelligent subterfuge to show transparency on an opaque paper. He represents water, which is particularly transparent. To represent transparency on an opaque paper, the choice of blue wave is extremely clever. The rose that Cresque Abraham copied on a fixed opaque paper is the picture of a calculator, which is composed of a fixed support and a turning disc. On this support, 14 names of port stops along the way between Brest and London have been inscribed. We shall see later the detail on the map. Current and turning disc is recovering the support. On the disc are the inscription of P and B for pleine mer and basse mer, high tide and low tide. The letter written by Cresque Abraham on the perimeter of the rose are reminiscent of those that might be found on a compass. For example, on the left of the picture, M, which is inverted, was wrongly identified as a Mistral or Mestre initial. The P, inverted also, was also identified as the initial for Ponant, L such Libeccio, etc. Cresque Abraham has copied around the road the initial of Canonial House, probably for decorative purpose, but also because he found them on the work from Honorius as initial of Canonial House. He didn't understand that they were initial of Canonial House. Here you can see the explanation of these initials. M is not the initial of Mistral, but the initial for Matine. L is the initial of Laude, P for prime, S for sex, etc. The confusion was possible by the fact that the compass card shows 16 directions, where the 16 spokes of the rose represent time, and more precisely time in Canonial House. The 16 spokes of the wheel represent Canonial House, which was actually used in the 12th century. A daytime was divided into 8 Canonial House, also subdivided into high and low time, which correspond in that total number of spokes. If we look carefully around the edge of the rose, you see light and dark markers. They indicate the beginning and the end of each canonial hour. These markers are shown in the middle and the center of the disc to make the reading easier at lower level. Each canonial hour represents 3 of our modern hours. We have therefore 3 modern hours for the space between 3 spokes and 1.5 modern hour for the space between 2 spokes. At canonial hours represent 24 of our modern hours. Here is the map that fits the route, which pass by the 14 port stops along the way, whose names are written on the support of the calculator. The names of port stops proceed from 1 to 14, exactly in the same order than we show them written on the rows of the Atlas Catalan earlier. Here you can see the 14 names of the port stops written on the support of the calculator. These port stops perfectly match the potential of the ships during the 12th and 13th century that we call Knarr or Knorr. Are especially advancing rowing ship, and they could easily reach speed of 11 knots. Norman Knarrs were almost similar than the famous Viking Draka. I also calculated on my map distances between these port stops. No one is greater than 50 nautical miles, about 80 kilometers, which confirm us that they are realistic. You can report on my map. With this calculator, however a little bit imprecise, but the principle itself is excellent, associated with the card indicating the possible port stops and the help of a compass, you would be able, if you own a Knarr, to rally island of Saint to London. So did the Norman navigators in the 12th century. On the map, I indicate Brest instead of Saint, because Saint is a very small island with no commerce, and Brest was a great commercial place since the 12th century. But Saint is very easy to identify for ships coming from south of France. It was a well-known maritime road. Saint is just in front of Brest, and ships coming from Brest going to the north use the same way than ships coming from south of France passing next to Saint. This is a legendary way. Pass under the Abbey of Saint-Mathieu on our second level. These are ruins of the abbey, and you can imagine ships passing just in the area. we shall use our calculator since Saint-Mathieu. I want to specify that the navigation in the area designed on the calculator is one of the most complicated in the world because of the tides. If you are close to land by low tide, you can easily sink your ship by hitting a rock. The great interest of the calculator for shipmen coming from south of France is that tides are the same at every stopland in Atlantic. When they pass Island Saint, they arrive in the channel and the tides are different at every port stop. That's why the calculator is unique. You don't need such a calculator in another place, only in the channel. Watch this map from Ifremer. Look at the red lines called coltidal lines. They show the points where the tides are the same at the same time and the same hour. The medieval calculator had the same interest for navigation during the 12th century that this map and modern ephemera now. Now we are going to practice the calculator. We choose Saint-Mathieu for departure, level 2 on the calculator for departure because it's convenient for ships coming from Brest and ships coming from south of France. We want to go to Batz Island level 4. In our example, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, or tierce in medieval hour. The tide is high tide. You put the letter P just on the name of Saint-Mathieu. Make a little mark on the disc to remember the hour of departure. You have about 30 miles to reach Batz Island. It takes 3 modern hours or 1 canonical hour if your ship goes around 10 knots. Turn the disc 2 spokes so you can see the situation 1 canonical hour later. Look at the situation in the 4th level. You arrive at Island Batz on the letter P, high tide. It is 12 hour, modern hour. It is 6th in medieval hour, good conditions. You want to go to Sept-Îles, level 5. You need 2 modern hours or almost 1 canonical hour. If you are tired to row, your speed will be less than 10 knots, perhaps 8 knots, and you will need 1 canonical hour. Turn again 2 spokes to look at the situation on level 5, Sept-Îles. The letter P is just before the name Sept-Îles. You arrive at high tide. It is none in medieval hour, 3 o'clock p.m. The tide is still high, but you must not go slowly because the tide is going down. In that example, we had good conditions. Now we have to consider bad circumstances. We choose another example in bad conditions to show the interest of the calculator. We choose another example in bad conditions to show the interest of the calculator. You leave Sept-Îles, stop 5, to Guernesey, stop 6. Distance is around 50 miles and you need 2 canonical hours to travel, 6 modern hours. If you leave Sept-Îles when the tide is high, place a P on the name and turn 2 canonical hours, 4 spokes. Read the situation at Guernesey when you arrive. Just before the letter B means that you arrive just before low tide. It is very dangerous or impossible. You have to modify the hour of departure or your speed to reach Guernsey at high tide. The solution is to go slowly, 5 knots no more. The travel need 1 canonical hour more. Turn the disc 2 spokes and you will arrive between a B and a P when the tide is going up. Conditions are best. Many other examples can be examined. I invite to do so on my website. The mysteries of the rose are detailed on my website ivanov123siteweb.fr. I invite you to visit and comment on my discovery. 2 other roses of the Catalan Atlas certainly have not yet revealed their secrets, and hundreds of other roses are scattered around the world. The door is wide open for other curious researchers of our past. The moral of these revelations about the mystery of the rose is that it's not because the texts are very old and that they hold the truth. Craig Abraham didn't recognize the calculator on the picture he was copying. Thank you for your attention.